everyone. I'm sure we're all feeling the effects of these Southern California wildfires.
Yeah.
Even if you're miles away, that smoke, it really has a way of making itself known.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So we're going to kind of go a little bit deeper today than just the usual, stay indoors, wear a mask kind of safety tips.
Okay.
You already know all that stuff. But what about dealing with the effects after you've been exposed to all this smoke?
Right.
We're talking things like stress, we're talking respiratory issues,
Yeah.
and we're going to explore a tool for recovery that might surprise you, acupuncture.
It's really fascinating how these ancient practices like acupuncture can be so helpful in these very modern situations. So we'll be exploring kind of how it works and, importantly, where it fits in with a broader approach to wildfire recovery.
Yeah, we've got a whole stack of sources here, everything from like Air Now and the American Lung Association to Teen Vogue,
Interesting.
and even personal accounts for people like James Min who are living through this right now. So let's quickly lay out why this wildfire smoke is such a big deal before we even get to the acupuncture piece.
Yeah, so even if you're pretty far away from the actual flames, that smoke carries tiny particles, PM2.5, I think they're called, along with really harmful gases.
Right.
And these can cause immediate irritation, like coughing, wheezing, even feeling like you can't get a full breath.
And for people who already have conditions like asthma or COPD,
Oh, yeah, it's even riskier for them.
it's way worse.
Absolutely.
I know James Min, who lives about 40 kilometers from the Palisades fire. He said the air quality in his area actually reached hazardous levels.
Oh, wow.
Schools were closed.
Yeah.
Ash was falling like it was crazy, and he wasn't even that close.
Yeah, and it really highlights how widespread these effects can be.
Yeah.
And what's concerning is that even healthy people can experience those respiratory symptoms, and over time, repeated exposure can lead to more serious problems.
Yeah, it's not just about being uncomfortable in the moment, it's about long-term health.
Exactly.
So this leads to the question of what can we do about it? Obviously, we all know the standard precautions. Checking the air quality reports on apps like Air, staying indoors as much as possible,
Yeah.
using air purifiers with HEPA filters, and wearing the right masks if you absolutely have to go outside.
All really important preventative steps.
Yeah, but I think we're interested in going a little bit deeper into what we can do to support our bodies after we've been exposed.
Right.
And that's where this idea of acupuncture comes in.
Exactly.
Now, I know some people might be a little skeptical when they hear acupuncture.
Yeah.
They might think it's some sort of alternative medicine fad.
It's understandable to have questions for sure, but I think it's really important to approach it with an open mind.
Right.
Acupuncture isn't a magic cure-all, and we're definitely not saying that it should replace conventional medicine.
Right, of course.
But there's a growing body of evidence showing that it can be really helpful in managing a range of conditions. And this is particularly true when it comes to stress and respiratory health.
And let's be honest, even if you're not like directly threatened by the flames, this whole situation with the wildfires is incredibly stressful.
Oh, absolutely.
I know one of James Min's friends is actually housing families that had to evacuate.
Wow.
And you can imagine the emotional toll that takes on everyone involved.
Absolutely. Wildfires create this ripple effect of stress that reaches far beyond the immediate fire zone.
Right.
And that's one of the areas where acupuncture can potentially help.
Okay, so how does it work?
Yeah.
How does sticking needles into someone actually help them relax?
So acupuncture works by targeting specific points along these pathways called meridians.
Okay.
And it's thought that it influences the flow of energy or ki in the body.
Interesting.
And when stimulated, certain points can activate what's called the parasympathetic nervous system.
The parasympathetic nervous system, that's one that tells us to rest and digest, right?
Exactly.
Instead of fight or flight.
Exactly. It helps slow down your heart rate, it lowers your blood pressure, it eases muscle tension.
So basically, it puts the brakes on that stress response.
Exactly.
So instead of feeling all wired and anxious, you're more likely to feel calm and centered after an acupuncture session.
Precisely. And there's research to support this. Studies have shown that acupuncture can actually reduce levels of stress hormones like cortisol.
Okay, that makes sense, but what about the respiratory stuff?
Right.
How can acupuncture help with the actual lung damage that's caused by breathing in all that smoke?
So it's not about magically reversing the damage.
Yeah.
It's more about supporting your body's natural healing process.
Okay.
There are acupuncture points that are specifically associated with lung function. And by stimulating these points, it can reduce inflammation in the airways, improve your breathing capacity, and help clear out phlegm.
So it's not just about feeling better, it's about actually improving how your lungs work.
There's evidence that suggests that's the case.
Wow.
And acupuncture has been used for a long time to manage conditions like asthma and bronchitis, which are often made worse by wildfire smoke.
That's actually pretty amazing. So
Yeah.
we're talking about acupuncture for both the mental and physical impacts of these fires.
Absolutely. And there's even more to it.
Okay.
We'll delve a little deeper into the nuances of how acupuncture can address these specific concerns. But first, let's take a quick break.
So we've talked about how acupuncture could help with both the stress and the breathing problems from all this wildfire smoke.
Right.
But before we go deeper into the specifics, is there anything that stands out to you so far?
You know what I find really fascinating is how we're seeing this intersection of ancient wisdom and these modern challenges. Like we're talking about wildfires, which are a growing threat, fueled by climate change. And then looking at a practice that's been around for centuries for potential solutions.
Yeah, it's like this reminder that even in our super high-tech world, sometimes the answers are these traditional approaches that have been around forever.
Exactly.
But let's get practical for a second.
Okay.
What would this actually look like for someone who's dealing with stress after a wildfire?
So let's say someone's feeling anxious, they're having trouble sleeping, maybe they're even having panic attacks.
Right.
A good acupuncturist would start by asking them really detailed questions about their symptoms, their medical history, their lifestyle.
Okay.
It's about understanding the whole person, not just treating a list of symptoms.
So it's not like a one-size-fits-all approach.
Not at all.
Everyone gets the same points.
No, it's very personalized.
It's tailored to the individual.
Absolutely. And even though there are some commonly used points for stress and anxiety,
Yeah.
the treatment will be very specific to the person.
Okay.
They might use points on the head, ears, hands, feet. It really just depends on that person's needs.
And thinking back to James Min, he mentioned feeling really on edge, worried about the fires spreading constantly, checking for air quality reports, which is totally understandable.
Of course.
Could acupuncture help someone like him find a little bit of calm amidst all of that?
It's definitely worth considering.
Okay.
Acupuncture isn't about erasing the situation or pretending the stress isn't there. Yeah, it's about giving your body the tools to cope better.
Right.
Remember that parasympathetic nervous system we talked about?
Mm-hmm.
It's about engaging that relaxation response, so you're not always stuck in fight or flight mode.
So it's not just about feeling better for an hour or two after the session.
Right.
It's about being able to handle that stress over time.
Exactly. And beyond the immediate relief, regular acupuncture treatments can actually help build resilience.
Okay, so how does that work?
Well, it's kind of like strengthening a muscle.
Okay.
The more you practice these relaxation techniques, the easier it becomes to access that calm state when you really need it.
And then on the respiratory side, we talked about acupuncture possibly helping with inflammation and breathing.
Yes.
So let's say someone is still dealing with a cough or some tightness in their chest, even weeks after the smoke is gone.
Right.
How could acupuncture help with those lingering symptoms?
It starts with a very thorough assessment again.
There.
The acupuncturist would want to understand the specifics of what's going on with their breathing. Are they coughing up phlegm? Are they short of breath? Is the tightness worse at certain times of the day?
So they're like a detective almost.
Yeah,
Figuring out what's going on beneath the surface.
That's a great way to put it.
And then they would choose certain acupuncture points based on that assessment.
Exactly. So, for example, if someone has a cough with phlegm,
Yeah.
they might focus on points that help clear the lungs and resolve that dampness.
Okay.
And for shortness of breath, they might use points that open up the chest and promote deeper breathing.
And we mentioned earlier there's some research to back all of this up, right?
Yes, there have been studies looking at acupuncture for conditions like asthma and COPD,
Yeah.
which share some similarities with the respiratory issues caused by wildfire smoke.
Okay.
And although more research is always needed, the current evidence suggests that acupuncture can be a really valuable complementary therapy.
Complementary being the key word.
Absolutely.
We're not saying throw away your inhaler
Right.
or ignore your doctor's advice.
Of course.
But it's about exploring these additional tools that might make your recovery better.
Exactly. And it's really important to remember that acupuncture is just one piece of the puzzle. There are other things you can do to support your respiratory health, like staying hydrated, eating a healthy diet, and avoiding smoke as much as you can.
All that common sense stuff that we tend to forget when we're stressed out.
Exactly.
But here's where it gets really interesting, for me at least.
Okay.
We've talked about acupuncture for stress, for breathing.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the effects on the immune system?
Right.
which obviously takes a hit from all this wildfire smoke.
That's an area that we're still learning about, but there is some promising early research.
Okay.
Acupuncture is thought to regulate the immune system by influencing the production of certain cells and chemicals.
So it's not just about treating the symptoms, it's about boosting the body's natural defenses.
Exactly. It's about supporting the body's ability to heal and adapt.
Wow.
And although we need more research to fully understand how it works,
Right.
the evidence we have suggests that acupuncture can play a role in modulating the immune response.
That's pretty amazing when you think about it.
It is.
This ancient practice could help us deal with these very modern problems like wildfire smoke and a changing climate.
Absolutely.
But let's shift gears a bit.
Okay.
We've been focusing a lot on the individual experience.
Right.
But wildfires have this huge ripple effect that impacts entire communities.
Exactly. And, we have this article here from Modi Yuba that really goes into detail about what's happening in LA right now.
Right.
Evacuation orders, shelter locations, all the specific details of each fire. And it reminds us that for a lot of people, this is about immediate survival, not just long-term health.
Yeah, definitely puts things in perspective.
Yeah.
While we're sitting here talking about acupuncture for recovery, there are people out there losing their homes, their jobs, their sense of normalcy.
Absolutely.
The whole other level of stress and trauma.
And it really highlights how important community support systems are. Whether it's providing shelter, donating to relief efforts, or even just listening to someone who's struggling.
Right.
There are so many ways we can help.
And this is where I think that idea of resilience comes in. It's not just about being tough as an individual. It's about communities coming together to support each other through these difficult times.
It's a crucial part of wildfire recovery that I think we often overlook.
Yeah.
It's not just about putting out the fires and rebuilding houses.
Right.
It's about rebuilding lives in communities.
And maybe acupuncture has a role to play there too.
Possibly.
Not just for individuals, but as a resource for the whole community.
That's an interesting thought. We've seen examples of community acupuncture clinics offering affordable treatments to people affected by natural disasters.
Yeah.
It could be a way to offer some stress relief and support to people during a really difficult time.
Yeah, it's something to think about. But let's bring it back to James Min and his experience.
Okay.
We have this article from Hank Yora where he talks about what it's been like to live through these fires.
Yes, and what really struck me about his story was how emotionally honest he was. He talked about the fear, the uncertainty, the constant worry for his friends and family who are closer to the fires.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder that even those who aren't directly in harm's way are still deeply affected by these events.
And it brings us back to that idea of stress being this invisible but really powerful force
Exactly.
that can linger long after the smoke clears.
And that's where I think the potential of acupuncture is really interesting. It's not just about addressing those physical symptoms from breathing in smoke.
Right.
It's about addressing the emotional and psychological impact that these events can have.
It's about acknowledging that wildfire recovery goes beyond just rebuilding houses and roads.
Absolutely.
It's about rebuilding lives and communities.
And it's about realizing that we all have a role to play in supporting each other through these challenging times, whether it's offering a kind word, donating to relief efforts, or just being there for someone who's hurting.
Right.
We can all make a difference.
And this brings us back to that concept of resilience that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
It's not just about bouncing back from adversity.
Right.
It's about learning from these experiences and coming out stronger and more connected
Absolutely.
as individuals and as a community.
It's about recognizing that these challenges can be opportunities for growth and transformation.
Yeah.
And even though it's easy to feel overwhelmed and discouraged when these things happen,
Right.
it's important to remember that we have the power to create a more resilient and sustainable future.
And sometimes the tools we need to build that future are closer than we think.
Exactly.
Whether it's the ancient wisdom of acupuncture or just reaching out to a neighbor who's struggling. There are so many ways we can contribute to a more hopeful and healing world.
And as we wrap up this part of our discussion, I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Okay.
What resonates with you most about this connection between wildfire recovery and the power of community resilience?
Yeah, it really is amazing how we always seem to circle back to community, especially when we're talking about something as huge as wildfires.
It really makes you realize how interconnected we all are, right? Like
Yeah.
what affects one person can affect us all,
Yeah.
whether it's the smoke or, just the emotional toll of everything.
And we've been talking a lot about acupuncture for individual recovery.
Right.
But it's interesting to think about how those benefits can actually spread out to the wider community.
Absolutely.
Like if someone's feeling less stressed, less overwhelmed, they're more likely to be able to show up for their community and help out, right?
Absolutely. It's like that oxygen mask analogy they give you on airplanes.
Right.
Like to take care of yourself before you can help anyone else.
Exactly.
And that's why I think these holistic approaches like acupuncture can be so powerful.
Yeah.
It's not just about treating symptoms, it's about empowering people to be their best selves.
Yeah.
Which ultimately benefits the whole community.
That's a really good point. But we also have to be realistic.
Of course.
Acupuncture isn't some magic solution that's going to fix everything.
Right.
We've got articles here from Fortune Well and Unilab that talk about the serious long-term health risks from wildfire smoke, chronic lung disease, heart problems, even cognitive decline.
It's serious stuff.
It's really scary.
And it just shows how important it is to take a multifaceted approach. Acupuncture can be a valuable tool, but it needs to be part of a larger strategy.
Right.
That includes things like preventative measures, conventional medicine, and addressing the root causes of these increasingly frequent and intense wildfires.
And that brings us to the big one, climate change.
Yeah.
I mean, we can talk all day about coping mechanisms,
Right.
but if we don't address the underlying issue, it's like putting a Band-Aid on a really big wound.
Exactly. We need to make some serious changes.
Yeah.
We need policies that reduce greenhouse gas emissions, that promote sustainable land management, and that prioritize the health of our planet.
And that requires individuals to take action too.
Absolutely.
Making conscious choices in our everyday lives, advocating for change, holding our leaders accountable.
It all adds up.
We've got all these sources here, Wired, the Washington Post, Times, CBS News.
Wow.
They're all talking about the science behind wildfire smoke, the health effects, and potential solutions.
Yeah, it's really encouraging to see so much attention being paid to this issue.
I agree.
It's a sign that people are finally starting to wake up to the reality of climate change and how it's impacting our health and well-being.
And it's not just scientists and politicians.
Right.
It's everyday people. It's communities coming together to demand action.
Absolutely.
Like James Min sharing his story, raising awareness, connecting with others who are going through the same thing.
Exactly.
It's that collective action that gives me hope.
Me too. It's easy to feel powerless when you're faced with such a huge challenge.
Yeah.
But every little thing we do makes a difference. And it all contributes to a larger movement.
And that's where I think acupuncture fits in so well.
I agree.
It's not just about the needles and the points. It's about empowering people to take control of their own health.
Yes.
To be more resilient, to become agents of change.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into wildfire relief and the potential of acupuncture,
Yeah.
what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from all of this?
I want them to know that even with all the smoke and the uncertainty, there's still hope. There's this growing awareness, this collective desire to address these challenges. And there are tools out there, both ancient and modern, that can help us heal, help us adapt, and help us create a more resilient future.
Beautifully said. We encourage you to check out all the sources we talked about.
Yeah.
Learn more about acupuncture and think about how you can use these insights in your own life.
Absolutely.
Remember, even small actions can make a big difference. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, stay informed, and stay well.